All right, let's talk about Spider-Man, one of my favorite things in the world. So what I do here on this channel is on Game Ranks, I do the big before you buy review video, which I did for Spider-Man 2, if you want to check that out. And then over here, I come and talk a little bit more of like an off-the-cuff review, just kind of from the hip, emotions, and really some of the best things about a game. And with Spider-Man 2, there's definitely a lot. It's been a couple of days since I put out the before you buy. That was spoiler free. This is also going to be spoiler free. So keep your eyes peeled for another video in a couple of days because there's so much I want to talk about in the story. Fuck. And like the references and like where it goes. There's a lot, so I'm gonna do that in a separate video, but I did want to get my thoughts out here on the game itself without any spoilers, and to be on the record, I do really love it. To kind of paraphrase my before you buy Game Ranks review is that it kind of has some of the same problems as the first game with some of the open world stuff, but really some kind of Mary Jane sections that kind of killed the pace a little bit. And I could have used a couple more enemy types, and this one felt like it moved a little bit faster than the previous game. Spider-Man 2018 felt like it had a little bit more room for everything to breathe. Here it's nonstop, but I think that's because this game, it's like an active choice. This one steps away from being like all Spider-Man feel-good nostalgia, emotional story beats to still having some of those emotional story beats, mind you, but also just going buck wild, insane on the action, the fan service, and shit like that. And fan service I know can often be construed as like a bad thing if it's done too much, but here it hit just right. For me, as a Spidey kid, a Spidey fan from the 90s, with the late 80s, early 90s comic arcs to the animated show in the 90s, this game is like a wet dream for our type of people, man. There's a lot that it just gets right. Like it gets Peter right, obviously. It gets a really good Peter and Mary Jane arc right. It gets Venom right. That's all I can really say. Well, I mean, it's not really a spoiler, but like he has the green drool, like the green slime coming out of his mouth and his teeth. Excellent, but also a really good Craven. So like they got it all right here, and I was very happy to see it told not just beat by beat from a specific comic book arc, but taking the concepts, taking the best of, and playing around with it. I mean, the fact that they made a story encompassing Venom, Craven, and then also Miles Morales interacting with those characters was really impressive, and it worked, and it didn't feel forced. Miles in this story, it fits so well. And what I can say is that I like that everybody gets a good amount of time here. Peter has his own interesting arc. Mary Jane has her own interesting arc. And with Peter together, I think that really works. Then Miles also has his own whole interesting arc. And then his arc with Peter is also something very interesting. All I can say without spoiling anything is that, and I'll talk about this more in a spoiler video, but the theme for me in this game between Miles and Peter is like, it's cool to be in awe of your peers and be excited about people in your group doing things and being amazing. Does that, I know that's really vague. I'm trying to keep it vague, but bottom line is like they got the story again. It goes way more batshit insane, and I think it might lose some people, but I think if you just like zany comic book shit like me, you'll be in. And some of the references they pulled from, I was really happy to see. One pretty early on in the game that I did not expect, and I think a lot of people have never been exposed to, so that's going to be really cool. But then just the gameplay stuff, also still really good. I love getting around the city. I like how the game is dying to just flex how big and detailed the city is, but how fast it can load it all in through like fast traveling and you getting more momentum through the city, or, you know, web winging through the city. I will say I don't love the web wing gliding. I like it in small spurts where it makes sense. Spider-Man has done it before, but when it turns into it kind of being like your Superman, that this is when you can get into certain wind tunnels that will travel you and whisk you through the city faster. You know, New York, known as the Windy City. It really kind of felt like you're just flying like Superman, and I was like, no, thank you. I'd rather swing. Like, it's like me being like, no, I'll take the stairs. Like, I would always opt to swing where I could. Even across long stretches like the bridges over, you know, the East River, it makes sense for them to have wind tunnels to zip you across. But I would love to just kind of swing over the bridges and try and do full swing loops over them and fuck around. And I like that. The game introduced a couple of new things to, kind of get your momentum up more and do some web swinging and stuff. First of all, there are some options that you can tweak to make it a little more challenging. You can also add fall damage, which is really nice, but you can shoot two webs and pull yourself and slingshot at any point, which is a really nice feature. There's also, I've talked about these in the preview video I did, where you can do kind of like a big full loop, kind of like what Spider-Man does on the crane at the very end of the web swinging sequence from the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie, where he does it and then he lands on the American flag at the top of the Empire State Building. I watch the movies a lot, I'm sorry. But you can do that, and you can also do like a hard right or hard left turn pull with your web, but you can actually hold that button so you can swing this way, which can make things a little interesting. These feel a little weird, like the physics wise, like they don't feel totally perfect, but they are additions to the web swing, which is fairly simple. So it does make it a little more interesting for me, someone who has fired up Miles Morales and Spider-Man 2018 just to go for a swing. Like, this is like my other relaxed game is like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, like do a quick free skate. I also just love to fire up Spider-Man. I always have it installed just so I can go for a web swing and just feel that fun. And this game still has that. And it still has a lot of open world stuff, a lot of busy stuff, but it's interesting. I like how a lot of it actually kind of has their own sub stories, or they have their own little things to get a little extra in the stories without spoiling anything. Again, it's hard to talk about them specifically, but there are some that actually feel like they add value and not just check, do this. It's like, hey, if you really like the game, you're going to want to find these things. And then also there are side quests that actually have little bits of story to them. A lot of them are lighthearted and fun, but they're nice. What the game did really nail for me is like the stress, like the real desperation, the existential dread that comes with the threat of Venom. I am very happy to see Venom represented really well here. It's nice. As someone who doesn't really love those Venom movies, this was cool. Obviously, it's different. It's still Insomniac's own spin on things, but like I've said so many times before, and I'm not like shilling for the development studio, but like they do get it. I think they do pretty much understand Spider-Man, and they showed that with Venom. Also, again, with the suits, they're really good this time around. I don't want to like spoil them all for people. Like, I think half of the fun is discovering a lot of them, but they're like, just like last time, this time there's wish fulfillment. Like, you want to swing around as this certain Spider-Man, you got it. Some from the previous game don't make it over to this one, which I wish they could have just like ported them all over to just have them all collected in one game so I don't have to go back to the old game. But still, there's a lot here, and where it's like, oh, this one from the last game is missing. Well, they added this one that replaces it that's from the same thing that's even better. So it really is kind of a wash. And I really liked Brooklyn and Queens more than I did from the preview phase, where it felt kind of sterile. Like, it all is kind of sterile. You can't really capture the magic of Queens or Brooklyn, but really Queens without Burger King and McDonald's and shit like that. Like, you can't have branded stores, but it did manage to have some of the feel. It's like in a very quaint, small version. You kind of have Forest Hills, but the train station over there, like they really got that. You can kind of see the World's Fair in the background, but like you can't go that far into Queens. There's some hidden weird stuff out there that's definitely worth exploring and stumbling upon. Some cool references. You see essentially like the rail yard where the Long Island Railroad goes into the tunnel. Nice too is like residential, more neighborhood areas where you see like traditional old school style Queens houses, many still from like the 30s and 40s, where like a family would rent the top part of the house and another family would rent the bottom of the house. Like, you as Spider-Man get to like perch up and like walk around and swing around those types of houses. And then Brooklyn, of course, Brooklyn has a lot of like ups and downs in terms of elevation. So that's where you're going to use the web wings a lot. And that's where I like the web wings, in short spurts to get you where you need to go when there's not a lot to swing towards. But what really sells it for me now is the addition of like highways and the amount of cars and detail they now have. Like, obviously more buildings look individually completely different, but for me, and I said this in the before you buy, but for me, the real wow factor was like perching up on a lamppost or a sign and overlooking a highway that like feeds into the bridge, and like it's just like an actual highway of cars coming and going, and it's dense, and it actually feels a little bit more like a city this time around. And like seeing FDR or like BQE or their equivalent of it was cool. It is definitely a special game. I think it's going to be keeping people busy for a while. I wish it was a little bit longer, but again, it was more of a feel pacing wise more than anything. There's a bunch of stuff to keep you busy, not to mention a photo mode. Once again, great. Had a lot of time in that. I have so many screenshots I've taken. Some of them are spoilers, so I couldn't really post them, but I posted some of them on Instagram and Twitter and whatever social media apps right now. So where the first game, Spider-Man 2018, had a lot of that wow factor, that holy shit, they did it factor. Spider-Man 2 doesn't have that, but it makes up for it in bombastic craziness. Awesome. There were the amount of times in this game I actually, like, you could ask Amanda, like she heard me out loud being like, holy shit, what the fuck? Oh my God. Like legitimately, things in this game happen on screen, and the amount of things happening on screen, I found myself multiple times going, I can't believe I'm seeing this happen on screen right now. Also, if I could go and tell young me that this was going to be happening on screen in a video game that looks realistic, he would never believe. I mean, he would never believe a lot of the things I would tell him if I went back in time, but hey, but specifically with this made my particular type of Spider-Man fan very happy. That's about all I can say right now, I think, without talking myself into circles and stuff. If you want to hear me go in more in depth on the meat and stuff with the combat and the skill trees and stuff like that, which I do really like the skill trees and the progression, mind you, check out the before you buy. I want to save energy because I'm still kind of sick to talk about spoilers in a spoiler video next week. But I know a lot of you guys get into the game now, possibly if you're watching this, or maybe you're waiting for it to drop on sale, whatever. Be sure to check out that video as well, because I'm so excited to talk about some of this shit. But anyway, you guys have been around here listening to me talk for a while. I appreciate it. If you like what I'm trying to do over here on this channel, where I do just ramble and talk about things I really enjoy, clicking the like button helps me. It has my back. Thank you. I've really appreciated talking more on this channel this year, so thank you for showing up and supporting it, whether it's Patreon, YouTube memberships, or just watching. I am legitimately grateful for that. I really got to go blow my nose. So if you'll excuse me, I'm Jake Baldino. See you guys next time. Subscribe because video games, pizza's on me.